What is up, ladies and gentle nerds? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and today we are going to be looking at yet another random magic card. So let's go ahead and hit that random card button. Let's pull it on up. Excellent. Okay, this one is actually pretty exciting. Today we are looking at Hypnotic Specter. Now, I really like this card because when it got reprinted, I believe it was was it 8th edition where this thing got reprinted? Back when I was first playing. Well, it got reprinted in M10, as you can see here. But this particular card is a classic. It has been around for an incredibly long time. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, I feel like it's been... When was it first printed? It looked like it was first printed in anthologies. That can't be right, because I'm pretty sure that was similar to a master set. But I believe this has actually been around, well, since Alpha, it looks like. And so I'll go ahead and pull up the original version here. Yeah, so this is Hypnotic Specter. Now, as you can see, the most updated artwork is fancier. It looks a little bit better. And by the way, when I say that I'm pulling these up, I'm referring to the YouTube feed. So if you want to see the artwork for the card itself, that is available on YouTube if you're listening to this in a podcast. So thank you so much for joining, no matter where you're joining from. So Hypnotic Specter, it is... well, I'm going to go ahead and pull up. I'm going to go back to the more modern one that we were looking at earlier. Boop. Let me go ahead and there we go. So this was printed back. This was reprinted in the mystery boosters recently, and if I'm not mistaken, it's actually going to be. I think it might be in Jumpstart as well. But what is Hypnotic Specter? So let's stop talking about the vague histories of, hey, look at how old this card is, and let's get into it. So Hypnotic Specter is a 1 generic black specter, which is a 2/2 flying creature. Now, whenever Hypnotic Specter deals damage to an opponent, that player discards a card at random. So this thing is great for a couple of reasons. A 2/2 flyer for 3 is not a bad rate, and actually back in the day, that was a very, very good rate. And so that's the thing. This thing appears to be more or less playable and not too bad in certain like black aggro strategies today. And so as a result, if there's a creature that is playable on curve right now, can you imagine how freaking good it was back in Alpha? Yeah, this thing was a house, because back then there was all kinds of crap that people were playing around that by today's standards is truly awful, but at the time was amazing in some cases. And so the fact that Hypnotic Specter has held up so well, and the fact that they can just reprint it today and just drop it into a set and it works, like it fits. It's great. I think this card is absolutely fantastic. And it has even spawned a number of imitators in the form of other specters. If you do just a search for the creature type specter, there are like, I want to say 8 or 9 different unique specters, and they all have similar effects. Now, one thing I want to point out is the artwork. So in this particular image, the newest artwork that's on Hypnotic Specter, which originally done by Greg Staples, who, by the way, is phenomenal. If you haven't seen his art, definitely go check it out. Some of that stuff is gorgeous. Actually, some of it's all gorgeous. Even on, like, there are a bunch of janky cards that aren't any good, but the artwork on it is killer. Anyway, you and I both know that. So this artwork is depicting what appears to be almost like a zombie demon dragon monster. And actually, instead of a dragon, it looks more like a wyvern because it doesn't have arms. But in any case, if you look at the creature's back, it has a rider, very clear on it. And one of the things you'll notice with the specters nowadays is they all seem to be riding on some kind of winged creature. That's something that you see a lot in the specter creature type. For some reason, actually, you know what? If anything, it looks very much like it's pulling inspiration from the Nazgul from Lord of the Rings. That's what I see when I look at this, which are the ring wraiths who ride on the winged fell beasts in the later books. So that's very much what I see when I look at this. To be honest, independent of Hypnotic Specter, if someone were to present this as fan art of one of the Nazgul, I'd be like, oh, okay, cool, that makes sense. Prior to the movies coming out and that image for the Fell Beasts being, instilled in everyone's mind, which, nothing wrong with it, they did a fine job, but I can totally see this as that, which is something that we see in fantasy. We see that in fantasy all the time. There's all kinds of crossover and references to different things. And so the fact that the Spectre image looks very similar to that, okay, like that, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's kind of become its own thing over the years, which is interesting because this Spectre, as you may have noticed in the artwork from Alpha, originally started as like a ghostly apparition. It was a humanoid figure that looked like a set of armor that was being filled with perhaps ectoplasm that was like animated and floating in the air. So it looked very much like a ghost, which the word specter, that makes sense. That's something that we associate with ghosts. So exactly how Specter went from ghostly humanoid creature to ghostly humanoid creature riding on some gigantic dragon monster, I'm not exactly sure why that happened, but all the same, it's fine. One of the things that you see with, I have no qualms with it. It's just kind of interesting. And I don't really understand when that showed up. I wouldn't be surprised if actually this artwork spawned the rest of it. I wouldn't be surprised if when Greg Staples submitted this artwork, they were just like, wow, that's freaking awesome. And they loved it so much that for future Spectres, the art direction was like, by the way, could this thing be on like a winged bat monster? That'd be awesome. Thank you. I think I wouldn't be surprised. But it has always had flying. So it being on a big winged creature, like, all right, it doesn't not make sense. So with the Spectres, what you end up seeing with almost all the Spectres is most of them are around the 2/2 range. So they're not quite weenies, but they're not quite fatties. They're like relatively small, but they're also relatively cheap. Most of the Spectres are like 3 and 4 mana, and almost all of them have flying and some way to disrupt your opponent's hand. Hypnotic Specter is possibly the best of them in that it forces the opponent to discard at random. Now, there's some other ones from later sets, if I'm not mistaken, that actually exile cards from your opponent's hand. I don't think you get a full Agonizing Remorse effect off of any of them, but all the same, it's very, very good. So discarding at random is a very powerful effect. And actually, discarding at random is the only reason why the Planeswalker Tybalt is hot garbage. You can take that exact same Planeswalker, and if you got to choose what card you discard, he's actually pretty good. Like, not amazing, but like playable and not bad. Whereas the fact that you have to discard at random makes it absolutely terrible. Now, take the exact same, like with Hypnotic Specter, if you took this exact same card and instead of making an opponent discard a card at random, they got to select which card they discarded, it would still be decent because it is limiting your opponent's options. And if you can get this down early, that can really cause a lot of havoc. Because if you're swinging into an empty hand, this is just a 2/2 flyer. There's nothing special about it. However, if you're swinging into an opponent that has anything in their hand, you're going to disrupt it, and that's going to be pretty sweet. So this on turn 3 or possibly turn 2, if you have some kind of ramp, is really, really good. Also, if like a killer play for around the table. Now, if you're playing in Legacy, you have better options for this. So this isn't like going to win you any tournaments, but something that can work really, really well and make you feel really powerful if you pull it off is a turn 1 Dark Ritual, which gives you 3 mana for the cost of 1 mana. So a turn 1 Dark Ritual into a Hypnotic Specter. I've pulled it off before. It feels really good because all of a sudden you're completely shaking up your opponent's hand. And if you're on the play, they haven't even had a chance to do a single thing yet. That's vicious. So it's fantastic when you can pull that off. It feels real good, you guys. Yeah, Hypnotic Specter is a very powerful card. It's good. It's good at what it does. It's arguably the best at what it does, which is really saying something because it was one of the first, if not the first. This was in the original set that Richard Garfield put together. And the fact that it can still get reprinted today just means that the design is super clean. Whether or not you like the card, that is evidence of a well-designed card and of a well-curated game. Now, would something like this be playable in Standard right now? I don't think so. We're seeing it with Rankle, which does something relatively similar. It's not a discard at random, but you also have some other modes. Like you have some other choices that you can use with it. So, but at the same time, you get a flyer that, you get a flyer in mono black that can disrupt your opponent's hand, and very few people are playing it. Not nobody. Some people, Rankle's out there. And actually, now that I think about it, the comparison between Hypnotic Specter and Rankle is more, it's more appropriate than I had realized because it swings on turn 4. Hypnotic Specter swings on turn 4 because it's a 3-drop that doesn't have haste. Well, Rankle's a 4-drop that does have haste. And it's a 3/3 instead of a 2/2. So actually, Rankle feels like the upgraded Hypnotic Specter. And I I hadn't made that connection before. Now, Hypnotic Specter forces you to discard at random, whereas Rankle allows the opponent to choose what they discard if you choose to make them discard. But you also have the option of making them sacrifice a creature or draw a card and take 1 damage. And you have the option of doing all those things yourself as well. So, yeah, it's very different, but it can meet a similar goal within a deck. Although actually nowadays in Standard, because of the power creep, I don't know that this would be playable at all because it doesn't have haste. Your opponent can just shock it, and actually shock is kind of a best case scenario because it's been around forever. I mean, actually look at just Thief of Sanity. I don't remember if Thief of Sanity is actually a Specter. I think it might be. And in that case, it's a 2/2 for 3, very similar in this case, except it's black-blue. And when you swing, you can look at the top 2 cards of your opponent's library, take a permanent from them, or take a card from them, and you can cast it and use any color you just straight up steal it, and you get to have your own thing. I've had a couple of games in the play queue on Arena where I've gotten a Thief of Sanity going, but if you've ever tried to play Thief of Sanity just in Standard right now, it is straight up impossible. There are so many good answers for it, and it doesn't do enough for 3 mana. And the fact that it has to stick around on the board before it does anything is a colossal issue, and that's what Hypnotic Specter does too. It has to survive on board for 1 go around the table before you can use it. And if cards like Ilharg or the Elder Gargaroth can't find a place and can't be effective, Hypnotic Specter absolutely can, because it can be killed by everything that those big fatties could be killed by, plus a dozen other things. Like red removal has 0 problem dealing with Hypnotic Specter, whereas something like the Elder Gargaroth, it's pretty big, so you'd have to have some pretty good damage-based removal in order to take it out, in order to deal enough damage to it. But all the same, current power creep aside, if you had given us Hypnotic Specter in Ixalan Standard, I think it would have been pretty good. I think it would have worked really, really well. And actually, I gotta be honest, I would love to slap a Curious Obsession on top of Hypnotic Specter. That would be super cool. So if you're forcing your opponent to discard at random every single turn, and then you're drawing a card every single turn, it just the card advantage swing that just that combination could give you would be fantastic. Yeah, I would love to see that. And I believe something like that could have been possible. Like a Dimir aggro in the Ixalan Standard with Hypnotic Specter would have been doable, I believe. But as it stands, there isn't really a good place for a card like this today. And that's a shame, because up until recently, it would have fit. It would have fit in a lot of places, but the current meta has just shifted just way too much. That said, if you wanted to build a commander deck that involved specters, that could be a lot of fun, because there are people who are going to be drawing cards, and so being able to disrupt certain hands could be valuable. And you could do a thing where your goal is not to completely eke out card advantage, because trying to get true card advantage on a table with 3 other players is a foolish endeavor. There's no way you're going to do it. So the best thing to do is just to limit the number of enemies that you have on the table, or limit the number of permanents that are negatively impacting your board state that are on the table at a time. And Hypnotic Specter could shake up somebody's hand. So if somebody's looking kind of smug and they have like 3 or 4 cards in their hand, go ahead and give them a smack with this thing, and who knows, you might hit gold on what they have to chuck. But that's kind of a chaotic element, and that actually fits the feel and the flavor of EDH and Commander. Because it's more about just those fun moments. And so I think that Hypnotic Specter has a home nowadays. I think it's still a very good card. And if you want to have a card that can be decent, especially if you're just playing with your friends or playing with new players, if I wanted to teach somebody how to play Magic, and we had some more simple decks that were more like aggro based, and I wanted to give them like a mono black deck to get the feel for the game, I would love to have maybe 2 Hypnotic Specters in there, just so that they can get kind of a taste for what a good rare feels like. Because when it hits the board, it's going to impact the game more than your little 1/1 zombies are. It just is. This will impact a board if it can survive on it. 100%, no question about it. The only situation in which it really doesn't in those situations is later in the game, if both players are playing off the top of their library. If you don't have a hand, this is just a 2/2 flyer. Although in those situations, if your opponent doesn't have any flying blockers, it's a 10-turn clock by itself. So even that's not nothing. That combined with some additional resources can really put together a winning strategy. So I feel like this card is just rock solid at what it does. It's just a really good rare from back in the day that has aged pretty darn well, especially compared to a lot of other ones out there. Just look at Wood Elemental. Look that up sometime. Oh boy. Yeah, has not aged well at all. It's like a wall with Defender, or it's a creature that has Defender, or it's like a 1/1 for 5 or something like that, and you have to sacrifice forests to give it temporary buffs or something. It's terrible. Anyway, cards like that were once playable alongside Hypnotic Specter. Well, of those, Hypnotic Specter is actually reprintable. Meanwhile, Wood Elemental is relegated to YouTubers and podcasters making jokes about it. So yeah, this has been Hypnotic Specter, guys. This is a really cool card. I like this one. I like this card a lot, actually. It does what it does. It does it well. It's been doing it well for a really long time. This little guy has been at work for over 20 years, and I gotta say, looks just as good now as it ever did, in my opinion. If they were to reprint Hypnotic Specter today, so this was in the Mystery Booster product, so there was a chance you would open this as a rare in a Mystery Booster, and I think that's really cool. Like, if I cracked this in a Mystery Booster, I'd have some mixed feelings, because one, I don't ever necessarily have a place for it right now, but I'd kind of like to find one, and it's a fun memory that is tied to it. And I bet a lot of people have fond memories of this, because no matter when you played before, because there's this age-old narrative that I know I fall into, and the more people I talk to, the more I hear that, well, I played at such and such a time, I took some time off, and then I came back around such and such a time. That's something that so many people have done. And so when you can come back to the game after taking years off and see an old friend like Hypnotic Specter there to greet you and welcome you back, and when you play it again, there's something that feels really good about that. Like, I got to admit, the fact that Fierce Empath is in Core Set 21 makes me so happy, because Fierce Empath was a card that was in my original deck, the very first deck I played back in Scourge. So the artwork's different now, but the effect is the same. And so when I'm playing drafts on Arena and Fierce Empath rolls through, I might be picking that a little higher than I should because I love that card. That little elf has given me a lot of great memories and set up a lot of amazing plays over the years. And I'm really glad to see it every time. And I have no doubt for somebody out there, or for a lot of people out there, Hypnotic Specter is that card where they have fond memories of their friends getting really salty as they had to discard their really great rare that they were hoping to drop next turn. I don't doubt that those moments are very special memories, and Hypnotic Specter gave those, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. So this has been Hypnotic Specter, been a fun little wistful journey down memory lane, if you will. I think this card is great. It's just great at what it does, and I know I say that a lot because I really like Magic cards, you guys. I'll be honest, I know that I'm very, very positive on the show because I can't help it. I like these things. I like them a lot. So I like what Hypnotic Specter does. I like what it is, and the fact that it has aged so well. I got to say, Hypnotic Specter, at your age, you are killing it. You are just defying gravity over there, and I absolutely adore it. Anyway, thanks so much for hanging out, guys. This has been an absolute delight. You can catch me on Twitch, twitch.tv/hamhawks42. This show is available on YouTube or anywhere fine podcasts are sold. And I hope you have a fantastic day. Stay safe out there, and I'll catch you next time.